Right now, we have some very special guests in the studio. Welcome, special guests. I'm joined by Keegan Bonebrake, who is the Executive Vice President of Everywhere Wireless, and Reverend Jack Seymour, CEO of Revive. And we're here to talk about a very interesting thing you guys have joined forces to do. So Revive is a 100-year-old nonprofit with the mission of aiding the homeless. And Everywhere Wireless is, as it sounds, it's all about technology and access and broadband and all that good stuff. And so you've joined forces. And who wants to jump in and talk about this cool project that you're doing?
I can start.
All right.
This is Keegan, Everywhere Wireless. Jack and I came together with Revive and Everywhere Wireless really to bring internet service to the residents of, and I'll let him talk a little bit more about, who his residents are, but we are an internet service provider here in the city of Chicago. And our goal is really to bring broadband to everyone, everywhere. And obviously we're not doing that quite today, but we hope that continues. And we had a great opportunity through existing partnerships and relationships in order to connect our two organizations together. And we were able to bring internet access to approximately 126 units, right? 126 apartment units with homeless people essentially that have that are recently off the streets and have come into Jack's care and now they have access to the internet through a contributory program as well as a very discounted offer that we made to them through a very long-term partnership. And, let Jack maybe talk a little bit about the demographics and his program.
Let's do that.
Sure, that'd be great. Revive Center for Housing and Healing, that's the long name, although everyone says Revive. For 100 years, it's been on the west side of Chicago, right near United Center. And we provide services and housing for individuals who are both homeless and those who are facing homelessness. So we provide 28 units of what is called permanent supportive housing, and this is for people that really are chronically homeless. They wouldn't be able to be housing themselves unless there was an institution available to help them. And then we also own an institution that's been a little bit in the news over the last year, and we have a hotel, the Royalton Hotel, which is a single residence occupancy hotel, the famous SRO, not only of Chicago, but of other places in the United States. And the reason why we have 98 units at the Royalton and run it as a not-for-profit is because SROs are really the last place, the most affordable housing, the last place where people go, that if they weren't around, we didn't provide that kind of single-room occupancy situation, they would be homeless. So altogether, as Keegan said, we have 126 units, which we provide and take care of people who are homeless or facing it. Additionally, the institution Revive does a variety of other programs, and that includes casework with individuals on the street that are homeless, and we haven't got a place for them yet, but we try to find them a place. Addiction treatment, that's one of the biggest causes for homelessness in the United States. I won't do a great lecture on the subject, but there are a couple of myths about the homeless. I mean, people think about people who are homeless from perhaps some movie they've seen where they see an individual might have lost their job all of a sudden and they've run out of options and they and their family are homeless. Well, those people do exist, but those people have support systems around them. So probably pretty quickly they found a cousin or an uncle or a parent or a grandparent that can solve their homelessness problem. 50%, of the homeless in America, you can really divide them into two major groups. One is mentally ill individuals that, quite frankly, cannot provide housing for themselves. They find themselves in a situation where maybe they've found psychotropics that can help them, but if they haven't got a stable place to live, they haven't got a place to keep their medicine, and they don't necessarily take their medicine routinely, so they find themselves in episodes that cannot allow them to keep jobs. So that's about half of the homeless. The other half are what we call chronically addicted. Chronic addiction is somebody who was probably born into a family where both parental units, if they were around, are both actively using drugs. Their formation period, 0 to 10, was in a family or an extended family unit, all of whom not only are using drugs, but are also, in a situation where the very economy of the neighborhood that they're involved in has to do with buying and selling of drugs. So they form themselves between 0 and 10, and they're probably using drugs by the age of 12. That's a chronic addict. And quite frankly, you don't send such a person to an addiction treatment program for 6 weeks and expect everything to be okay. They'll struggle with addiction their entire life because they were born and formed in addiction. And as a consequence, they make up the other half of the homeless. So this is a population that exists that's going to need some sort of assistance in order to live. And so there are lots of institutions, from the Salvation Army to private for general not-for-profits, to government, to Revive, that provide assistance for these kinds of chronic homeless individuals. We at Revive also provide for their children. So, because one of the things that happens if a chronic homeless person has children and they're on the street, by definition, they no longer can maintain their children in a homeless situation. So by providing, for instance, in these 28 units of housing for individuals that we have that are assisted through government, we also have 14 children staying with us. Well, what's wonderful about this program that Keegan's company has been able to provide for us is not only do the homeless get cut out of sort of the basic anymore in our society. It's very hard for them to get basic needs like medical, even if they wish to improve their own lot. As you know and everybody knows, you better know how to use a computer these days, or you can't even see what's out there in the way of services that might be available for you or answers to questions. Now, when you add their children into that,
so much is done online.
Exactly right. So much is done online anymore. Very difficult for a child to excel in academics without having a clear understanding as well as access to
I think even for very young children, the syllabus really dictates with the assumption that the kid has internet access and can complete homework. I mean, I'm seeing teachers that work on Google Docs entirely, and that assumes access that a lot of kids don't have.
Absolutely right. If you have a homeless situation, you might actually be able to carry a laptop around with you, but if you're homeless, you're not going to have it for very long.
Not safely.
Not safely.
Right. And so how did this come about? How did this partnership first start?
Well,
who approached who here?
It was kind of a mutual approach, I should say, only because we had a mutual relationship with one of the board members of Revive, and he was an existing client of ours at the time, and he introduced me to the organization, and it sort of developed over a duration of time. Probably over about a year, I had attended a couple events that Revive was involved with, and the recipient of some of the money fundraising for that event. And we started looking at, well, hey, you have these 126 units with these residents living in them. How can we connect them to our internet network, and how can it make cost-effective sense? And so, one of the things that we did is we stepped back and tried to figure out how can we get very creative, because we obviously know that they're not in a position to pay us a market rent for this. And so, we went out and we evaluated sort of what they were doing currently. And so they were, I always sort of, it's amazing to me. There's an old technology called a T1 line, and the T1 line is a very slow internet connectivity these days, but there's still a lot of businesses and a lot of different even residents that are paying, several $100s a month for a T1 line. And so, we looked at this opportunity as, how do we basically take what they're already budgeted for and expand it? And so, without getting into all the details of the economics, they were essentially receiving internal internet access only, and we were able to expand that for the same amount that they were paying on a monthly basis for their office to all 126 units, plus give them internet access, and still give them additional dollars in order to go out and get phone service and some other things. And so, in addition to that, we invested about $40,000 into both of these buildings. So we pulled new Cat 6 cable to every single unit, which is really the new standard in delivering internet service. And so both buildings now have a permanent infrastructure upgrade over a long-term relationship. It's, a minimum of 7 years. And, and that wiring is there forever. And that's the most cost-effective way, in order to deliver internet access these days.
And for such a great cause, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed. It is darn difficult to navigate just about anything now without getting online to do it, whether that's a service that you might need, whether that's, and then you brought up kids, right? If you have kids and they're trying to navigate the school system, there's a whole other set of things that now are only being done online. So this partnership is a very good one. As you see it unfold, what is it meaning to your clients so far?
Oh, it's extraordinary. The fact is that the internet is essential to getting at we do casework, which we sit down with individuals, and I should even back up from that. One of the goals of Revive is that even though you're homeless, it's likely you'll have a family. And what we try to do is keep that family together. And that's the only thing that breaks the cycle of homelessness, is families can stay together, work through the problems that they have, and the kids are given an opportunity to get into the mainstream of life, and have every opportunity every other child has. But if having every other, now take it forward, every other opportunity that every child has means that you have to be on the internet and internet savvy. And it's not just sort of the sitting back and saying, well, all they're doing is sitting around and twitting. They may be sitting around and twitting, but that's how people learn the internet. That's essential. But it's also their parents get online to find out, well, how is it that I can deal with this nutritional problem that I've going? How I don't have the money to deal with my kids' braces issue, and I know my caseworker's available to help me do that. But what's out there? Even the simple basics of, well, I've got an opportunity maybe to do a part-time job. How am I going to get there? And if you don't have the internet, that's a real problem.
Sure.
We all take it so much for granted that we just get on the computer and type in the address and just tell us how to get there. What if you don't have a computer, or even more importantly, what if you haven't got the ability to hook that computer up to anything? You're not going to have access to the basic needs that are really becoming essential to operating in the 21st century.
Okay, so you mentioned equipment. What about equipment? I mean, I feel like if you're in a situation where you're facing homelessness, or in fact are homeless, maybe buying a computer or something is not a high priority.
It's, I think, becoming more and more of a priority, but it is, I'll do it this way. How did Revive deal with this issue prior to Keegan's company coming along, and Everywhere Wireless? And the answer was, we had a computer lab. It's open, a good portion of the day. It's only closed for a little bit in the middle of the night. Homeless people that were on the street who don't have a computer could come in and use the lab. But even so, keeping data files, et cetera, is not possible on public computers, so you're losing some of that access. So we needed a way to just start out with the basic equipment, and the basic equipment is wires. Remember, we have 2 buildings in 2 locations. One of them is 4 stories tall. The youngest of the 2, I think, is 60 years old. And so as a consequence, that's 126 units. You remember what it was like when you wired your house for internet or cable or Comcast or whatever? That's a process.
Getting the, person to show up and put a wire in the wall is like an 8-day process.
Now multiply that by 125.
Right.
So, yeah, I think Everywhere Wireless put down, it cost them $40,000. I think they're being very generous in that. It took them weeks to get all the wires in. we could not have afforded to do that. And then on top of that, if you had to go out there into market rates on internet, you all know what you're paying for internet if
Sure.
you're on, say, one of the internet services. In fact, we all complain about it these days, what that actually costs. Well, imagine if that $60 a month fundamentally equated to your entire monthly income, which a lot of the people who are housing, fundamentally, that's where they are. They don't make more than $50 or $60 a month. And you're saying, are you kidding me? How do you live on that? You're homeless.
You don't. Right.
You don't.
Right.
So, yeah, Everywhere has really put us in a situation where we'll be able to provide a service that we simply couldn't have done. It's out of the question that we could have done that for them. And it's an essential service.
Excellent. So people people listening want to know, we're starting to see texts and tweets here, they're wanting to know how to help and how to support this, how to support Revive generally, but also this particular endeavor between this partnership between your two organizations.
Sure. Well, supporting Revive is very simple. We're a 501c3 organization. We're a not-for-profit. We actually do a variety of events. We have fundraisers. But the bottom line is 312-997-2222. And you'll get our central switchboard. We're supported from three separate arenas that really make up our budget. Government reimbursement for the services we do makes up only about a third of our budget. Another third of it comes from a variety of churches throughout the area that see the work that we're doing is essential to their mission in the world. And then finally, the remaining third is from individual donors. And the vast number, the largest number of our donors are small donors. Manage $50, $100. That's really absolutely great. And we do our best to take care of people that simply can't take care of themselves. And I'll always make my little pitch here, both for the conservatives and the liberals in the world. We're supported by a lot of people who have a liberal point of view because they want to make a better world. And they'll never make a better world if they forget the least amongst us. But the other side of it is you can make just as strong a conversation with those who think that a conservative approach is the more prudent way to approach the world if we don't take care of homeless individuals. Quite frankly, they're going to cost society considerably more than if we don't take care of them in organized structure. They're going to cost society in crime, they're going to cost society in medical bills, and they're going to cost society in human dignity, where we don't break this cycle of homelessness, and the problems just remain with us forever. I'll get on my soapbox.
I like that you can talk to both sides there. I always appreciate a good bipartisan answer there. That's good.
Well, we can, the sadness is we know what it costs to end homelessness in the United States. It's just the will to do it. Chicago is highly focused on this issue. It was ending homelessness was a big issue to the previous mayor, and it's also a big issue for the present mayor. And President Obama took that point of view out into Washington and has created a higher focus at the federal level, particularly on veterans.
Well, that's what I was just about to ask you. There was an NPR story not too long ago that was comparing Los Angeles and New Orleans. And essentially, in New Orleans, a veteran facing homelessness really, within about a day, can get that resolved. In Los Angeles, not so much. There's really not a solution there to back him or her up. What is the situation in Chicago?
Well, it's not so much the question that there isn't a solution. Veterans have access to a few more programs than non-veterans in a homeless situation. But I have to say, veterans face a bureaucratic structure in the Veterans Administration that is daunting. It's not so much that there isn't a desire to assist the homeless vet, but two things are occurring there. Number one is that you go through the Veterans Administration process for finding housing. And as I said, that can be complex and daunting. And the other is our veterans, and I'll just stay with it. Our veterans, in many cases, are continuing to be heroes. They're individuals who want to tough it out. They're individuals who don't want to turn to government or the Veterans Administration even and say, take care of me, I haven't got a house. It's a situation where they're still being heroes, and they need to stop that. Because we need to take care of them, and we need to identify where the problem is so that the problem can be solved. The great horror of these days is the single largest growth industry is homelessness and veterans, because we're engaged in issues throughout the world that are returning people to us constantly with PTSD that really have post-traumatic stress syndrome, and often it isn't diagnosed. And so you're looking at somebody on the street that you think, they should just get up and take care of their problem. Well, their problem's a medical one. It might be an undiagnosed one. They might be a veteran, and they simply don't know where to go and how to get the problem solved.
You know what? This past 4th of July, I saw for the first time, I was happy to see this. It was signs in people's yards that said, a combat veteran lives here. Please be sensitive about fireworks, which I really liked. I thought that was really thoughtful because that's a very real thing. And even sometimes like a very managed case of PTSD, there are triggers attached to that that can be very serious. Yeah. So I liked that. And I'm happy to hear that you're looking out for veterans. That's very, very important. And what percentage of your client group right now is veteran?
In our case, most of our, it probably is less than 20%. The history of our organization has been focused on individuals with addictions as a primary diagnosis. We pick up a lot of veterans in that because one of the things that happens with post-traumatic stress syndrome is they self-medicate. So you find somebody and on the surface, the issue is, this person has an addiction problem. Well,
there's always a reason.
There's always a reason. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, that's excellent that you're doing that work. And so people continue to ask how they can support your organization. So revivecenter.org can get them pretty far. And it looks like you have an event coming up on November 13th at the Lacuna Artist Lofts, which is lovely, is a lovely, lovely place. And it sounds like there's going to be a lot going on there. So you can go to the website. Again, it's revivecenter.org. 312-997-2222 and learn all about that.
Absolutely.
Hear it all. Are you going to that, Keegan? Are you going to be there?
Yes, I will be there. I will be there.
Good. You better. You're doing all kinds of wonderful stuff.
Well, if I could add in just real quickly,
sure.
It is a very special event on November 13th because that's our 100th birthday.
Doesn't get much more special than that.
No, it doesn't.
That's excellent. It sounds like a great night. It sounds like you're going to raise a bunch of money for all these great causes. And so, Keegan, how has this partnership, what has this meant to you? Because you do a lot of, you work on a lot of.
We do a lot of community, driven
because really the word I see around your organization is that wholesale internet idea.
Yes,
it's not the idea of like an individual connecting.
Well, and I think it's also just about the creativity behind it. I think that historically, the big telecom companies have sort of, I think, without naming names, I think people have.
We all know who you mean.
So we try to get a little more creative, and that creativity is trying to lead to more access to more people in all these different environments, whether that's homeless shelters, that's the beaches, that's parks, Rahm and Obama, and everybody sort of has this vision, but somebody has to piece it together, and I think in order to do that, we really have to get creative. And so I definitely welcome the opportunity to talk to other nonprofit organizations throughout the city of Chicago and other similar organizations that, may think, I can't afford internet access, or, I'm just not in a position to make these upgrades or these infrastructure improvements. And, I think we just need to step back and sort of take a look at it and be creative about the process and come up with a solution that we really can bring access to, the entire city of Chicago much more affordably, and not be pigeonholed into 3 telecom internet providers here in the city of Chicago.
Indeed, indeed. Well, wonderful work that you're doing, and I'm so glad that you have started this partnership and that found each other and doing all this great stuff, because I'm sure it will be very impactful to a lot of lives. And that is all that matters, right? That's helping
Absolutely.
people do good work and improve themselves and live a life that they want to live. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm thrilled that you were here. So again, everybody, go to revivecenter.org and you can read all about them, learn how to support them. Again, Keegan Bonebrake, Executive Vice President of Everywhere Wireless, and Reverend Jack Seymour, CEO of Revive. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.